So today I'll be continuing with my schedule discussion and point spread prediction videos. Today I'll be doing Baylor. So Baylor has really fallen apart as a program fast. In 2021, they had their best season ever, winning 12 games and winning the Big 12 and getting a big New Year's Six ball win over Ole Miss. And in 2022, they had high expectations and didn't come anywhere close to what they did in 2021. They uh, fell off to 6 wins only. And then in 2023, they were supposed to finish around 7-5 and have a decent season, but they didn't come anywhere close to that. They finished a horrible 3-9, so they fell way off again from where they were in 2022. And Baylor has in the past been a pretty solid football program in the Big 12 conference. Uh, mm, I think if they could get back to being a more solid program, they could have a chance to get in that 12-team playoff in the future. Now, it's not happening this year. I'll just go ahead and tell you. But Baylor does have, I checked, quite a bit of production coming back from last season. The exact number is at 66%, and that's quite a bit compared to most of the other teams in returning production. Mm, so I really have no doubt that they'll have a better season than they did last year and improve on that 3-9 record. But I do think this schedule is going to make it hard for them to get to a bowl game, but not impossible. Uh, some obvious good news with this schedule is now that Texas and Oklahoma are gone, they don't have to play either one of them. Uh, and they start the season against Tarleton State, which is an FCS team. That's uh, the one for sure win I see on Baylor's schedule this year. And then they play Utah on the road, which I explained this in the Utah video that uh, this game is not a conference game, even though Utah's now in the Big 12, because this game was scheduled to be played before Utah decided to leave for the Big 12. And still, though, as a non conference game, it's going to be really tough and very unlikely for uh, Baylor to win it. They played last year, and but Utah still beat them with horrible quarterbacks, and now they've got Rising back who is looking really good now. Uh, so not much of a chance there for Baylor. And then they play Air Force. Now, this is nowhere close to a sure win. It's a game that you would think that Baylor can win. But if Baylor isn't any better than they were last year, they will lose to Air Force. Air Force isn't Power Four, but they are in the Mountain West Conference, and they're a pretty good team from that conference. So they're not horrible. Uh, and then they start their conference schedule, and they get to start it in a good way. They have to go on the road with the. They just have to go on the road to play the Coach Prime Colorado Clown Show. So that'll be an obviously very winnable game. And if Baylor's going to have a much better season, they'll have to win this one because of how bad Colorado is going to be. Uh, and then they play BYU at home. That's nice to have that game at home. It's very winnable. Uh, Baylor and BYU are probably close to the same, though, on how good they will be. Uh, mm, and then they play 2 road games in a row against Iowa State and Texas Tech. But uh, there's good news with that they get a week off in between. Uh, and these will both be tough games for Baylor to be able to win even one of the two, but not impossible. I do think Iowa State and Texas Tech are both at least a little bit better than Baylor right now. Mm, And then they play Oklahoma State at home. Now, this is a game that it really it would have been better to have just played it on the road and then had like TCU uh, or no Houston at home because mm, Oklahoma State is going to be really good, a likely top 15 team this year, maybe the best team in the conference, and uh, I just wouldn't give Baylor much of a chance in this one. Uh, and then they play TCU at home. This is good to have at home because I would give them a pretty good chance to pull off this one. But TCU, I would say, is probably a little better though than Baylor. Uh, mm, and then they take a week off before uh, two road games in a row against West Virginia and Houston. That didn't work out well for them uh, because it would have been much better to have a week off in between West Virginia and Houston. West Virginia, it wouldn't be impossible for Baylor to pull an upset in that one, but uh, I don't think there's that good of a chance for them. Uh, but they probably will play them close, I would think. But West Virginia is a pretty tough place to play, and I think they're quite a bit better than Baylor. Uh, Houston, they'll have a good chance to get that game, uh, but playing it on the road is going to make it more tough, even though Houston doesn't have that good of a home field advantage. I think Houston and Baylor are probably pretty close to the same on roster. Houston might be a little bit better because I did look through their roster some, and uh, it's not bad. It's actually decent. Uh, mm, and then Kansas at home. Kansas has now become a lot better than Baylor, it seems, in football. Of course, getting it at home, I think, will give them a little bit of a chance. Uh, but I think this is a likely loss for Baylor. Uh, I think Kansas is probably going to have too much offense for them to keep up. Uh, so on this schedule, they have about 6 games on here that they'll have a really good chance to win. But then the other six, it's going to be hard for them to even get one win in those games. And it's going to be very hard for them to win all 6 of those that are very winnable. So that's why I think a bowl game is kind of unlikely right now. It probably looks more like a 5-7 season for Baylor this year. So now I'll move on to the point spread prediction. Mm. So mm, uh, if you want to see more about how I do point spreads, you can watch my first video of these, Ohio State. But games in the green are games where I think Baylor will be a blowout favorite, which is 20 or more points, and I see one of those, Tarleton State. And games in the pink are games where I think they'll be favored to win by about a field goal, so 1 to 5 points, and there's 2 of those. Air Force and BYU, uh, and uh, games in the black or toss up games, which means there wouldn't be a clear favorite right now, but there could be a favorite when it comes time. So there are 2 of those, Colorado and TCU. And games in the gray are games where I think Baylor will be about a field goal underdog, and I see 4 of those: Iowa State, Texas Tech, Houston, and Kansas. And games in the yellow are games where I think Baylor will be about a touchdown underdog. That's 6 to 9 points, and there's 3 of those: Utah, Oklahoma State, and West Virginia. So Tarleton State, Baylor should be favored in that one by about 30 points. Mm, and Air Force, I think Baylor will be favored by 4 or 5 in that one. That one could end up being in the purple, which those games would mean that Baylor would be about a touchdown favorite. But uh, because Baylor was so bad last year and Air Force is decent, I didn't think it would quite make the purple. Uh, and then BYU, because it's a home game, I think Baylor will be favored by a couple of points, probably 2 or 3. And Colorado, I think Baylor would probably be a small favorite at home, but because it's on the road, I decided to just leave it as a toss up. Because if Baylor is as bad as they were last year, Colorado will probably be favored in this game. But Baylor, I'm not as sure is going to be terrible like I am Colorado. Baylor, I think, it has a higher ceiling than Colorado does, so that's why I've got it as a toss up. Uh, and then TCU, that's a toss up because Baylor gets them at home. They would no doubt be an underdog on the road. And Iowa State, I think they'll be favored to beat Baylor by 4 or 5 points. Uh, Probably around 5, I would say, but at least 4. Uh, and then Texas Tech, they'll probably be favored to beat them by 4 or 5 points also. Mm, uh, and then Houston, I think they may be favored against Baylor because Houston gets this game at home, so they may be favored by a point or two. But I think Baylor would be favored at home. And then Kansas, I think they'll be around a 5 point favorite mm, over Baylor. That would be in the yellow if it was a road game. Uh, and uh, mm, Utah, they'll be favored, no doubt, by at least 7 in this one, probably 8 or 9 points. And Oklahoma State, I think the spread in that game will be around 7 points. And then West Virginia, I think they'll be about a 6 point favorite over Baylor. Uh, mm, so that will be it with this video. And please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. And I'll be back soon.